All right. Are we going to start with the Iowa depth chart on
Sure.
the offensive side?
Yeah, let's run through the offense. Where do you want to start?
Let's start at quarterback.
Well, this one should be easy. I won't bore people with my 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 or in the quarterback room 1 through 6. But I think it's safe to say if Mark Gronowski's healthy, he will be the starter. It would be a shock if he's healthy and is not the starter, barring something completely unforeseen. Now, I think the big debate, even after spring ball, is who's number two. We've talked about Jackson Stratton. He looked better during that open spring practice, final practice of spring, than did Hank Brown or Jimmy Sullivan. But you also get Ryan Fitzgerald coming in, and you've got an interesting and intriguing guy in Jeremy Hecklinski coming in from Wake. So, yeah, as far as quarterback's concerned, Gronowski's the guy, barring something really unfortunate physically.
Somebody made a comment to one of our videos here recently, basically saying, I think that they thought that both of us were underestimating Iowa for this coming season, to say, if you put together the Mark Gronowski that we could get as a star coming in from the FCS and a drastically improved passing attack, and then a vintage Iowa defense, then what do you get? Well, if it's a vintage Iowa defense and
Yeah.
Mark Gronowski turns out to be a top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten, then wow.
We don't know that this is going to be a drastically improved pass offense. We just don't know that. I mean, do I want to think it is? Yeah, sure. The reality, though, is that the defense did take a step back last year, and I have faith in Phil Parker, but those are pretty general questions. How good is the defense going to be? How good is the offense going to be? Right? Those are still question marks.
Just to clarify and to give you this side of the argument, as Cheviota is pointing out, Kirk is 69-32 since PJ Fleck took over at Minnesota, and PJ is 56-39.
Okay.
So PJ's 17 games over 500, and Kirk is 37 games over 500. So it's not a blowout, but it's not close. It's not debatable.
So we want to move to running back, Mark.
Sure.
That's probably a more difficult one to identify a clear number one, and I was not afraid to go running back by committee. I'll be honest, people can go back and look at my record. I did not expect Caleb Johnson to have the year he had last year. I don't think people outside the program or within the program expected him to have the year that he had last year. At some point, maybe they did, but let's not forget he was suspended for, I think he missed, was it late in fall camp? Or I don't know when it was. He missed a day, and it sounds like it was just he went off and did some Powerade shot for his NIL initiative and basically skipped practice and got suspended, and was not a good look. But then he ends up having almost a Heisman level year at running back. If it's not for Ashton Genty, he'd have been the running back everybody's talking about. So, yeah, big shoes to fill in there. And I thought Jazz Patterson looked really good, but frankly, Mark, how many years have we? Jazz Patterson's a redshirt junior. This is year 4. I feel like I say that every year about Jazz. Like, I always like what I see in practice. He hits hard. He runs with authority. He hits hard. Maybe not the most patient, but to me, he's the type of guy that if I don't know where his hands are, but you'd love to have someone like that as a third down back. Short yardage situations, but can come out of the backfield and pick up short yards in the passing game. But I think it'll be him and Kamari that'll share that load. It sounds like Terrell Washington Jr. is back in the running back room basically exclusively. Remember, he was running a lot at receiver last year. So those two guys together, depth again. I guess we don't have to make this a depth show, but really impressed with Nate McNeil. He was the kid that a lot of people were kind of eyeing during the final spring practice. True freshman running back out of Florida, and another Liddell Betts recruit. So obviously a different era now, the new running backs coach, but I think they're sound there at the top with 1 and 2 at a minimum. And I like Xavier Williams too. Tree trunks for legs. The future is bright in that room, assuming they get the same type of development they had under Liddell.
When I think of Jazz Patterson, I think of the second half against Iowa State on the road.
Yeah, if it's not for Jazz Patterson, they probably don't win that game. I was just reflecting on that one the other day. Won that game by 7 and really struggled offensively entire passing game struggled. That was a Cade game. He was healthy in that game, or marginally healthy. So I guess we can move to tight end. You lose Gavin Hoffman, but again, you bring back two really experienced guys. Gavin Hoffman was lost this spring. They lose Luke Lachey from last season. Obviously, he's the biggest one. Also lost Johnny Pascuzzi, who, by the way, has jumped now from, I think he went to Tulane with Brendan Sullivan. So Pascuzzi transferred to West Virginia in December. And then this spring, he was right back in the portal and now is with Brendan Sullivan at Tulane. So best of wishes to the Kansas City native, who was a good tight end for Iowa, but they stay healthy. Stringa's a senior. Zach Ortworth, time has flown by with both these guys. I mean, I remember talking to Addison when he committed. In fact, I posted a video with myself and him on, I think the day after, well, maybe it was later on, but it was from that open spring practice here a few weeks ago. And I asked Addison, like, man, I remember when I interviewed you. How does it feel now? 3 years have flown by and you're in year 4. And he agrees. Time has just flown by, I'm sure, faster for him. But those two guys, I mean, I think have a chance to be really good. I think Zach Ortworth has shown himself to be maybe more of a deep passing threat at tight end. You just wonder how much involvement that position will have with this new Tim Lester offense. It took a step back last year as far as volume. And then Hayden Large is working more at tight end. I think we're going to see less fullback with him. I think the room's really healthy, really strong. They're going to get more people in. They get LeVar Woods' kid in. They get the 4-star from up in Clear Lake. They'll get him in this summer. And Michael Burt is a promising young kid from Omaha. So, health is always going to be important because I think, again, they're just like running back. They're top 2 or the clear top 2 at this point.
All right. We can move it out to wide receiver, the best wide receiver core at Iowa for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably I hesitate to say this because people love to throw this stuff out and then it never comes to fruition. On paper, it's the deepest room that we've seen at Iowa since probably the early 2010s. I mean, I was thinking about this after you and I talked about the Smith-Marset, Brandon Smith era. That was a good group at the top, but it wasn't very deep. And I think they got a chance of being deep this year. Now, what does the top end look like? Can the top end be as good as Smith-Marset Smith were? I don't know. They still weren't, incredibly productive in that offense, but that's the key in that Brian Ferentz offense. So Reese Vanderzee struggled to stay healthy last year, had the huge game against Miami, Ohio, week 1, or Illinois State, whoever that was they played. And then I think Jacob Gill's the best receiver on the team. He's a redshirt senior. Seth Anderson's a redshirt senior. He's in his final year. Sam Phillips is a redshirt senior. He transfers in from Chattanooga. In my opinion, those should be your top 4. No questions asked. Like, if they all pan out, and it's on them, right? I'm not going to, if Tim Lester and John Budmeyer end up going with a different, top 4, so be it. And the only reason I don't go with Gill, Anderson, and Phillips is because I think they still want to have some height at the X spot. So, they may be flexible with guys like Phillips and Anderson, but Reese Vanderzee gives them that 6'4", 6'5" frame they like in the next guy. So I think those are your top 4. And then, there's exciting prospects behind them. Dayton Howard, Caden Weegan, KJ Parker. And I'm probably missing someone else that somebody will yell at me for later. Who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing somebody obvious. I guess that's probably it. Jarrett Bowie. Jarrett Bowie would be one. He missed a lot of the spring, unfortunately. So you kind of have a bad feeling now. He's in his sophomore year. You kind of feel like he's going to be a bit behind the 8 ball, so to speak. They switched Alex Moda to DB. Is there anyone else that I'm missing? I don't think so. But that's a pretty, like I said, that room, Mark, has a chance to maybe be, 6, 7, 8 deep. I don't know how feasible that is, honestly. I mean, we've heard good things about everybody. I just look at the production that we got from Sam Phillips, albeit FCS level. Production you got from Seth Anderson. He's finally healthy for spring. The early flash in the pan that was Vanderzee, and then the steady Eddie that Jacob Gill is. And then you just wow, the speed of Caden Weegan, if he can just develop I don't know what aspect of his game is behind in Iowa's eyes, if it's route running, if it's pass catching, but the dude is a really good athlete and obviously electric when he gets the ball in his hands. So they got a chance to be really deep there. But I think that's your top 4.
Well, I think until somebody gets hurt, you're obviously only relying on 3, but you would like to have, let's say, 5 that you feel comfortable they can play.
Right now, I don't know that they'd be comfortable, but I look at that and I think number 5 would probably be Weegan. I just don't know how you leave him off the top 5. I mean, he's, return specialist of the year nationally. And then, like I said, you got a couple of young guys, Howard, Parker, Bowie, who will compete as well because injuries are going to happen.
So is it fair to say that the offensive line, after having a down 3 or 4 years, has been better the last 2?
It's been better the last 2. Obviously, took a big step forward last year. Still think they can improve in pass pro. I think Bryce George is really going to help that. I think he'll be their starting left tackle, assuming Jennings Dunker's healthy. That's probably the biggest health story to follow this offseason. He and Bowie, and Gronowski, of course. Assuming Dunker's healthy, he's your right tackle. So you got your bookends. Logan Jones is your center. Bo Stevens is one of your guards. They got him listed here at left guard. So I'm assuming he'll probably remain there, but I think he's probably going to be flexible. And then, who takes that last spot? Could it be a guy like Cade Pieper, who's a redshirt sophomore? Could it be a guy like this kid from Iowa State that just transferred over, George Nahas? Cale Winter, Trevor Lauk, we mentioned him. I think he's probably more of a tackle. Jack Dotzler is definitely a tackle, so he'd be a guy you just want to develop for depth. Cannon Leonard, same thing. Michael Maslinski's finally healthy. There's a guy, redshirt senior, who's stuck around, has hardly been on the field his entire career, was a really talented and hyped up prospect out of the state of Florida when Iowa got him. I think he picked Iowa over Michigan State and a couple other solid schools. Finally healthy. Wouldn't it be a cool story if he could emerge and give them spot minutes or spot snaps at right or left guard? But assuming Bryce George gets there as health and everybody stays healthy, I think they're in a pretty good position. The difference is they're just going to be less deep. Like, I don't know, after your top 5 or 6, I don't know at that point. So, receiver, they could be 7 or 8 deep. Offensive line, I think it's more important to be 7 or 8 deep. So I think, you'd rather be 7 or 8 deep up there than at receiver, but they got a lot of people working at that, and they'll get, like I said, George in here this month. Both Georges.
Our buddy Seth is saying that Iowa had a top 10 offensive line in the country last year.
Well, how do you rate? How do you rate that? I mean, I'm sure Fantasy Football or whatever that is, Pro Football Focus, they rated Iowa top 10. I'm guessing that's what he's referring to. Caleb Johnson got a lot of yards behind that offensive line, Mark. But I also think if you look at some of the past pro numbers, not as good. If they were as dominant of an offensive line as that number would make them out to be, then why didn't Mason Richmond, who is a 4-year left tackle, and Connor Colby get drafted higher than the 7th round? Is that a fair question, Mark?
It's a fair question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can only go based on what I know about offensive line play, which isn't much, but logic would tell me that if that line was as dominant as we're making them out to be, that their best players would have been drafted higher. But hey, maybe that's just how good Logan Jones and Jennings Dunker are. Then that's a great problem to have. You get those two back. And Seth, I already mentioned Cade. If you missed the first part of the show, Cade Board is not on the team anymore. I don't know if you're looking at Cale Winter, confusing him, but okay, I see Doc P's question. I apologize. Yeah, Doc P, we talked about Board earlier in the show. So as of right now, he's not listed on the active roster.
Unfortunately, in trying to track the best offensive lines in college football, everybody does those rankings prior to the season. So it's not a review of the season to say these were the best offensive lines. I found about 5 different articles that ranked the offensive lines prior to 2024.
And Cheviota, he asked the question, did pass pro look bad because of subpar QB play? Yeah, that doesn't help. But if you go watch some of those early games, especially with Cade, there were a lot of games, Mark, you saw him, where he was under duress constantly.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's a combination of both. They were better in pass offense last year for a couple of reasons. They still were not as good as they needed to be, and that's for more reasons than just quarterback and receiver play and play calling.
I may have mentioned this. I came across this maybe a month ago that Pro Football Focus has Jennings Dunker rated as the 6th best returning offensive tackle in college football.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. I've had people say, including Don Patterson in the past, that they think he's more of a natural guard. Probably in the league, he's not going to be playing tackle. So that's probably what those pundits mean. But yeah, he's been effective, and he's probably, if not their second most, or if not their most, he's their second most important offensive lineman coming back.
According to PFF, the 2nd best run blocking grade.
Yeah, got to be better in pass pro, right? I mean, that's you're reading all about his run blocking. Okay, well, his whole line needs to be able to give the quarterback more time this year. And they're not going to have a Caleb Johnson running back there either.
Yeah, that's a good point. And give more time to a quarterback who's coming off injury.
Yep, and they've had one of those for a while now, coming off injury.